Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode number 347 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Andrea. Andrea is Adrienne's Sissy. So she was Adrienne's sister, but she was really more than a sister to Adrienne. She was her legal guardian and really a mother to Adrienne. So we go quite a bit into that story, so I won't go into it here. After Adrienne died, Andrea really struggled to find purpose again in life. And we've talked a lot about that on this podcast in many, many episodes, but it's really striking how much this was a part of Andrea's journey. So she found purpose again in trying to help others who are suffering from liver cancer. And so she started a wonderful organization called a Blue Fairy. Fairy is spelled F-A-E-R-Y, like the Irish way, the way Adrienne liked to spell it. So she'll talk a lot more about that organization as well. But it's pretty amazing what she's been able to do in Adrienne's name. I also want to take a minute here to talk about the next live stream. So the next live stream is going to take place on Monday, May 18th at 4:30 in the afternoon Eastern time. We tried that time last time and hopefully it works because actually I'm recording this before we even do that live stream. But I have given some thought to what I might want to cover, and I feel like the timing of that live stream really lends itself to talk about transitions a little bit. And transitions into summer especially. So that week that episode will be released and the live stream is going to be done is our last week of our Starlight Ministries support group before we have our summer break. And I started thinking about that. I started thinking about summer breaks and what summer means to the grieving person. Because if you have young kids especially, summer looks really different. And it can be kind of scary when you don't have all of the structure of the school year going on. Also, summer brings up the ideas of family trips and family vacations, and those just don't feel the same without our children in them. And even if you don't have young children anymore, still that transition to summer makes you think about summer vacations and summer trips. And I just thought it would be a nice topic and something that we haven't really covered before. So again, that is Monday, May 18th at 4:30 in the afternoon Eastern time. I do not have a sponsor for this week's episode, but if you would like to sponsor an episode, you can feel free to go to andysmom.com to the donate page. You can also donate through GiveButter by going straight to GiveButter. You can also even donate through Venmo if you want, but if you do that, make sure you send me an email with a little more information so I, have something to say about your child on that podcast episode that you donate for. So again, any donation of $125 dedicates an episode to the child of your choice or the person of your choice, really. Right now, though, I just want you to sit back and enjoy listening to Adrienne's Sissy. Thank you so much, Andrea, for agreeing to come on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today.
Oh, Marcy, I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Yeah, I am excited to have you here too. It's very funny. I think, so a lot of people when they come on, when they first look at me, they comment about Andy's room, but you were struck by the fact that I was in Andy's room recording right now.
I love it.
And it's funny because as I was sitting here waiting for you, I was looking at the walls and that it was blue, and I thought, and blue is so special to Andrea and Adrienne that that felt kind of cool too as I'm looking at my blue walls in my boys' room. So
yeah.
Because you've got an organization called Blue Fairy. We're going to get into that more, but it's funny when I went on the website, there's just so much about blue and how much your sister loved blue. So I know that's going to come up quite a bit, but I
Yes.
can't wait to hear all about your story and your
Oh,
sister.
well, thank you. Thanks again
Yeah,
for having me.
absolutely. Well, do you just want to go ahead and get started?
Let's jump in. Let's do
All
it.
right, let's go. Let's start out by just having you just tell me about your sister Adrienne. And you have, I mean, you were her sister, but you're also ended up being her legal guardian. So there's
I
quite
did.
a bit to that story and leading up to that I feel like we probably should go into because I feel like it's different than a normal sister relationship, right? I should put
Right.
that in quotes like normal, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Adrian and I have the same mother, but different fathers.
Okay.
Uh, Our mother was engaged to her father, and he died very suddenly in a car accident before Adrian was born, before my mother even knew she was pregnant. My mother was in her early 40s, didn't think she was told she could never get pregnant again, and she was pregnant. And so when Adrian was born, she was born in April 1986. In fact, at the time of this recording, her birthday is 12 days away, and I decided to take off work because it's going to be her 40th, and the ones ending in zero are always super hard for me, and it
Yeah.
just feels like this milestone. So we are 14 years apart in age. So for the first 4 years of her life, I mean, she was all through high school, she was my sidekick. I went to high school in Alabama, so everybody thought she was my kid because at that time the teenage pregnancy rate was in the nation was the highest in Alabama, and it was a really special relationship. I mean, I took care of everything for our mother, and I mean everything from balancing the checkbook to cleaning the house to I'll say cooking loosely because I'm not a good cook, but I did everything. And then I moved away to college. I moved to Los Angeles
Mm-hmm.
to go to the University of Southern California. And I still came back to visit. In fact, my sister came out to see me in LA for 10 days during the summer when she was 6. And slowly my mother's life unraveled because our mother was a drug addict. She was a very high functioning one. She was a nurse. So back in those days, you had very easy access to drugs, and she would bring them home. And she calls me one day and said, I lost my nursing license for shooting up morphine at work. And when that happened, things went downhill really quickly, very quickly.
Yeah.
She'd already been moving like every year to a different state. So my sister did not have any consistency in schools or friends, and it was really hard on her. And then she said, can she come visit you for Christmas? And I said, sure, of course. Now, at this point, I had graduated early from college. I had made some not excellent life choices, and I was living with an alcoholic boyfriend. But as far as I knew, this was a 2-week Christmas vacation. This was December of 1994. So Adrienne comes to visit. She's 8 years old. I'm 22. And the day after Christmas, our mother calls and said, I don't want to be a mother anymore. And at the time, I knew her life had unraveled. I knew she refused to go to treatment. I should say that. She easily could have gone to rehab. It's very common for nurses and doctors to have addiction issues.
Mm-hmm.
And she refused because she would not admit she had a problem. So she calls the day after Christmas, says she doesn't want to be a mother anymore. It was also 3 days before her 50th birthday. And I didn't make that connection at the time. It made me wonder if there was something there about that as well. But I saw my sister, and she was in bad shape when she came for that Christmas. Her hair had not been cut, her nails had not been trimmed. She didn't have good clothes on. I mean, just I was really worried. And so I just told our mother, I said, if I take her now, I am not going to give her back. And my
Yeah.
mother was like, well, whatever. I mean, really, that was her attitude. It was very laissez-faire. So she signed over physical custody to me right away. And then she didn't really call or anything for 8 months. And then she called out of the blue 8 months later and said, okay, I've found a steady job. She was getting paid as a home care nurse under the table, again, without a license. And she said, you can send Adrienne home now. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And I think she was really surprised. And so ultimately, we did go to court, and I fought for legal custody and very easily won. And so that's how I ended up raising her. So I raised her from the time she was 8.
So you were her sister, but sort of her mom too.
Yeah, we had a deal. So this is a funny story, and I think every parent will appreciate it. A few months after she had been living with me, her birthday's in April. We take her out for her birthday, and she throws this like crazy fit. She just turned 9 and she was acting like she was 2, and she was screaming and yelling because the staff was singing happy birthday to her at this restaurant. So we're dragging her to the car and I mean, kicking, screaming. It was a nightmare. And so I take her to her room and I said, "You got to stop. Like you got to stop." And so she's just yelling and screaming. And I was like, "That's it. I'm going to send you home." Now, there was no home to go back to, but she didn't know that at all. And this was back in the days. I'm dating myself, but the Gen Xers will appreciate this. This was back in the days when you could call an airline and make a reservation without a credit card, and they would hold it for 24 hours. So I just called the bluff and I picked up the phone right in front of her. I made a reservation for the very next day to put her on a flight. And I said, "Start packing, kiddo. You want to go home? You're going home." Again, there was no one to go home to. There was no place to go. And I had no way of paying for that ticket. But she didn't know that. So I leave and she continues to, like, I mean, I can hear her throwing things against the wall. And I just stayed in the living room and I was like, this is it. Like, this is a make or break moment for our relationship. And I just have to hold the line. I can't give in. And I don't know how I knew that. I just inherently knew not to give in. It was an hour later she came out and she would look at me and she said, "I want to stay, Sissy." And I said, "Okay." And then I made her look at me and I said, "If you stay, you will never, ever act that way in public again. That's unacceptable." And she said, "Okay." And I said, "And I think we need to have clear boundaries about our relationship. I have to be your parent first and then your sister. And one day when you grow up, I really hope I'm your friend." And she said, "Okay, Sissy, parent, sister, friend. Got it." And that defined our relationship.
That's a beautiful story. I love that.
Thank you. I even have a painting in my office wall, a splatter painting that she made that says parent, sister, friend. So,
Oh, that's special.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, why don't you go on now and just talk? You talked about your relationship. Talk about her then after she was in your home. Did she change? Did things change then? I'm assuming being in a more stable environment.
Things got better. I mean, we did not have financial stability at all because I was very determined to be there for her and be on her schedule.
Yeah.
When she first came into my life, that was not the case. And so I had at one point like 4 part-time jobs, but they all allowed me to be on her schedule. And then eventually I became a substitute teacher so I could be there before she went to school and be there when she got home. It worked, you know.
Yeah.
She was an incredible student and she struggled in middle school. There was a real low in middle school when she was 12 where she was severely depressed and I found a suicide note, and it was very specific and intentional. And if she had cleaned her room, I wouldn't have found the note, but she wouldn't clean her room, and I did. But I found the note. We were very fortunate that we got connected with an incredible counselor who specialized in teenagers. And it's so hard to find a therapist at any age, but I just feel like we were very blessed because we found the perfect therapist at the perfect time, the first time around for her, and she called her psycho doctor. And shout out to Denise. I'm still in touch with Denise to this day. And so she began seeing Denise, and about a year or so into going to therapy every week, she was doing much better. And I said, "Do you want to still see Denise?" And she said, "Yeah, I like having someone to talk to, besides you. And I need that." And I said, "Cool, that's fine with me." And once she got into high school, she really found herself. And
Hmm.
it was amazing because she stopped caring what other people thought. It was
Yeah.
incredible. And she was always a good student, but she ended up with a 4.0 GPA. I mean, her freshman year, she was taking AP courses. She was a year ahead in math compared to her peers. And she ended up having a boyfriend who was, the perfect fit for her. They were both like equally weird in their own ways, but I mean, she was so solid in who she was. He would call her after school. They went to different high schools. There were only 2 high schools in Burbank, but they went to different ones, which I was very happy about. But he would call her after school and she would say, have you done your homework yet? And he'd go, no. And she'd go, call me when you've done your homework. Click, So that's how she was.
Yeah.
She was just this very strong, bright, vivacious personality.
Ah, sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to talk now about her diagnosis and her illness?
On May 16th, 2001, so she was about 3 weeks shy of finishing her freshman year of high school. I came home from work, from teaching, and I found her curled up in a fetal position on the living room floor in pain and clutching her right side and saying, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Now, mind you, normally when I came home, because it was a rule in our house, she would be sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework,
Hmm.
but not this day. And then she volunteered to go to the doctor. I mean, we were going to, but she volunteered, which she never did. And so we go to see her pediatrician. Now, we had seen him 2 weeks before for what he thought was a pulled shoulder because her PE credit in high school was dance and she was dancing all the time. She was super active. He thought we were back because of the shoulder. And she said, no, no, I can't breathe. And then she shows him her stomach. And I always felt like I was a very fortunate parent because she would never wore skimpy clothes. A lot of her friends did, but she never did. She hid her body. And her stomach had been distended and swollen for a few days, but she didn't tell me and she didn't show me. And he didn't like that at all. And he sends us to the local hospital. There's only one in Burbank for a CAT scan. And as she gives you an example of her wit, as she's being wheeled in for the CAT scan, she says, hey, Sissy, which is what she called me, watch it be cancer. And she laughed and I laughed. And I said, oh, bite your tongue. And she said, ha ha ha. And so then we're just waiting in the ER. It's still the two of us, and we're waiting for these results of the CAT scan. Her pain is under control. We don't know what it is. And they had speculated maybe internal bleeding. She had just been to Coachella a few weeks before with my very different boyfriend who became the only father figure she ever had. He had taken her and her boyfriend and they had gone and they had been pressed against those metal bars for hours. And so they thought there was some kind of internal injury. And then this ER doctor came in, and I will never forget the look on this man's face because my first thought was, oh boy, like he's about to say he's never said before. And he wouldn't look at her. That was the other thing. Pay attention to body language. He would not look at her. He would not say her name. He said, she has tumors in her liver and lungs. We're not equipped to handle the situation. We've arranged for a transfer to Children's Hospital, Los Angeles, and I'm sorry. And he walked out. And we both burst into tears at the same time. And then she went from crying to laughing. And I was like, why are you laughing? And she said, I was just joking when she said, watch it be cancer. And I think she and I both knew in that moment it was cancer. We didn't get confirmation of diagnosis for 2 more days when there was a biopsy. But I think right then in that moment, we both knew it was
Yeah.
cancer.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Quite the horrible blow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It was fast.
So that started that journey.
That started a journey that was 147 days. It was less than 5 months.
I was going to say, quick, quick.
Very quick. Yeah, it had already been.
What was her diagnosis?
Her diagnosis was hepatocellular carcinoma, which
Okay.
is primary liver cancer, and HCC for short, and it had spread to her lungs already. And when they saw what they did in the biopsy, they came out because these doctors were just stunned because I don't want to get too deep into the medical terminology here, but like her regular blood work, your CBC was normal. One of her liver enzymes was slightly elevated, but I mean, other than the
Really?
pain, yeah, other than the pain, she was presenting very normally. And they came back out while she was recovering from her biopsy, so she wasn't awake yet. And they said, tell us more about why you have custody, tell us more about the situation. And I was telling them, I hadn't even brought in the guardianship papers yet, and I don't even think I'd been home yet in those three days. And they said, well, we're going to test her for hepatitis. Now, at the time, all I knew was hepatitis A because there had been an outbreak in the LA County, LA Unified School District, where she went to elementary school, and I knew hepatitis A was related to contaminated food and water. But I'm thinking that's not what they're talking about here. But they didn't elaborate. And they came back and they tested her and they said, we're really sorry to tell you this, but she has hepatitis, chronic hepatitis B and hepatitis C. And
Oh, she
based
had
on,
both.
she had
Yeah.
both, and
Hmm.
based on when she was born, and based on your mother's drug use, we believe she got it from your mother
Hmm.
during birth, which is called vertical transmission.
Hmm.
And both of those are leading factors for liver cancer.
Yeah.
And she had both. So,
Wow.
yeah. And we
Wow.
never knew. We never knew. And that right shoulder pain, and I don't like to scare people, so I always preface it by saying, it was a very specific circumstance, but right shoulder pain like she had 2 weeks before is a sign of advanced liver cancer because there's a nerve that goes from your liver all the way up to your right shoulder. And it's not unusual. It's getting better now, but it's not unusual for patients to be diagnosed in advanced stages because our livers don't have pain receptors. So when she said she couldn't breathe, it was because her liver was so swollen, it was pressing on her diaphragm. So
Hmm.
she literally couldn't breathe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. So she went through some different treatments, but overall it was pretty quick. I do want to talk, I think this is a good time to kind of talk about her love of the color blue, though, because that, this, this kind of, I think this is a good time to talk about that. So talk about her in blue.
Oh goodness, she was obsessed with blue. Favorite color. Yeah, so she wanted to dye her hair when she was 12, I think. And I said, no, no
Yeah.
way. And I said, when you're 14, you can dye your hair. Just you can dye it any color except black because that's almost impossible to come back from. And luckily I had some people in my life that backed me up on that. And she said, okay, I won't dye my hair black. So she's about to turn 14 and she said, she's like, tap, tap, tap. Remember what she said 2 years ago? And I said, okay. And so let's see. She dyed her hair. Actually, she dyed it red first, and then blue, and then purple, and then right before she started high school, she dyed it blue again, like this bright, bright blue.
Hmm.
Um, and so when she went into the hospital, it had faded to kind of this teal color, and she still had blonde roots, even though she was a brunette, because we had to bleach it
Bleach
before
it
the
before,
dye would
yeah.
take, right? So yeah, she was sad about losing her blue hair, and she got a blue wig to
Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about was her blue wig.
maintain her look. She loved that blue wig. She loved it. In fact, she had a lot of wigs, but that was the only one she really liked was her blue wig because it's exactly how she wore her hair in a bob with bangs. And yeah, she loved the color blue. It was her absolute favorite color. So
Well, and it was adorable wig too. I think you have a picture of her with the
I
wig on the
do. I'll
website
send you
too.
pictures. Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
she's so adorable in it. So
Yeah.
I thought, oh, you got to talk about blue with her.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. She was obsessed.
So obviously she went through her treatment. It was 147 days. Then things change again, right? Because then you lost her.
Yeah. There's so many questions now. I mean, I felt like I was educated, and then we even had a friend who was a scientist who came in and said, ask X, Y, and Z. And so I felt like I asked all the right questions, but there's so many more questions I know now that I would have asked. But at that time, there were no drugs specifically for HCC. So the chemotherapy that she was getting wasn't even specific for liver cancer, and it was completely useless. And we did switch it. We actually transferred her care from Children's Hospital, where they did not see her cancer very often because she had a true adult cancer. There is a pediatric liver cancer that's quite different. She did not have that.
Hepatoblastoma, yeah. I
Exactly, hepatoblastoma.
because I'm a pediatrician. I've only seen really hepatoblastoma, which
There you
I
go.
definitely seen
Yeah.
in kiddos, but
And really young kids. Yeah.
not that. Yes, really young kids. Hmm.
Yeah. So we transferred her. It took 6 weeks of fighting with the insurance. I did not have insurance for myself, but I had health insurance for her through a loophole in the California law. So thankfully we had decent health insurance for her. But 6 weeks of fighting with them to get her transferred to UCLA, where they saw her cancer every single day. And they were great in terms of this team working together. I mean, by the time we would get back from an appointment, the lab results would be waiting in my fax machine. Like, they were really, really cooperative. And when she said, hey, I want to go back to school, even if it's homeschool. So she said, I'm not going to come into the hospital anymore for chemo. It's not working and I don't want to do it. And they totally respected it. So she started her sophomore year of high school at home with me as her teacher for a few subjects. And then we got the school district involved and some other teachers volunteered. And so she quote unquote went back to school. And it was important to her. And it was really hard because she was really struggling and things that used to take her, 30 minutes were taking her an hour and a half, but she was bound and determined. And then she took a really sudden turn for the worse. But I mean, I could not, I was not in denial about her diagnosis or her disease. That was really clear to me from day one. But I was in denial that she was going to die because I thought there has to be a way I can save her. Like, there has to be, right?
Right. It just doesn't seem possible, though. I mean,
Yeah. And at the very last minute, thanks to connections I had, I actually got her approved for compassionate use for a drug that they didn't know if it had any efficacy in liver cancer, but they knew it couldn't hurt her, and that it actually helped with hepatitis B. And her doctor at UCLA agreed to administer it and help oversee it. And so she was kind of going to be this one very young woman clinical trial. And back in those days, if you were under 18, it was nearly impossible to get in a clinical trial. They just did not exist for kids and teenagers. And I was kind of holding on to that, but she never got a chance to even try the drug. She took a really quick turn. But I'm very, very happy that she died at home in her bed and surrounded by people who loved her. She almost died in the hospital. They wanted me to put her on a respirator, and I said no. And they made me sign a DNR, and I just knew she was still in there. And I have one more funny story. Can I cuss on your show?
probably not.
Okay, all right,
We'll take
all
it
right.
out.
All right. Well, I'll just go beep.
Okay.
So, they said, well, if you're going to take her home, we got to go on hospice. I said, fine, I'll do whatever you want. I don't care. Now, I had been up at this point for 36 hours. It was a very treacherous weekend in the ER and then at UCLA. And so this hospice nurse comes in, and I have my whole body draped over my sister, and she's like a sleeping beauty at this point. They just can't wake her up. And I knew this hospice nurse, her job was to convince me to put Adrienne on a respirator. And I just looked at her and she said, hi, I'm so and so. I'm like, I don't care who you are. I said, I am taking my baby home. So I'll sign whatever it takes, but I'm taking her home. You can't talk me out of it. And later, after Adrienne died, she said her nickname for me after meeting me was Andrea, don't F with my Andrea, don't F with my family, Wilson. And so, which best nickname ever and totally true. Like, don't F with me, okay? And so what was crazy is they were preparing for her to go home, and they wanted to put a catheter in her. So everybody leaves except for me and two nurses, and they're preparing to put a catheter in her, and she wakes up. She's like, Sissy, make them stop. And the nurses are just stunned. And she looks around and she's like, where am I? She goes, I have to go to the bathroom. And then she wouldn't let me help her. And she grabs her IV pole. She goes to the bathroom. She comes back. She gets in bed. We put the covers over her. We can hear everybody outside, the doctors and all this commotion. My partner, John, like I said, he was a father figure to her, my two closest friends. And she's looking around, and I'm like, let them in. And everybody comes streaming in. And the doctor, who kept insisting that I put her on a respirator, I mean, he was just silently weeping, just weeping. And Adrienne looks around and she goes, I don't know what all the fuss was about. I was just dreaming. So she woke up, talked all the way home in the ambulance, trying to figure out where the last 36 hours went. And then she died 2 days later at home. So I got her home.
I'm glad you got her home.
Yeah, me too.
That is extra special.
It is. I've heard you talk on your show about giving your child a good death. And, if you can give anyone a good death, it's special. It's very special.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about the Blue Fairy organization that you've since developed and how that kind of came to be. Because it wasn't one of those things that, like, she died and the next day you're doing this.
No, no. And never have I met a nonprofit founder who said, when I grow up, I want to start a charity. Like, no one never says that ever. A year after she died, I was incredibly suicidal.
It's so hard because, I think back to you too. You took her on when you were so young, just barely out of college.
Yeah.
I mean, you grew up to adulthood being a mom to her, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have like any life without. Like, you might have an adult life and then you decide to have children and things like that. That was just
Mhm.
kind of thrust upon you. So it would be, I mean, I feel like a lot of us feel like we've lost purpose when our child dies, but I feel like especially when when you're so young and you become that mother figure, that
Yeah.
it's extra hard, I think, right?
Yeah, she was my purpose. She
Yeah.
was. Yeah, giving her the best life I possibly could was my purpose.
Yeah.
Like everything was secondary to that.
I know you can just tell that from as you told the story of taking her on and working 4 jobs and doing all of this. You were
Yeah,
doing that for her from the
for her.
beginning. So she was your purpose, period.
She
You
was.
know,
She was.
whatever
She was.
job you picked in order to give her the best life you could.
Exactly. Thank you for acknowledging that. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so she dies and I've lost my whole purpose
Yeah.
for being. I mean, I eventually went back to work as a teacher. My heart wasn't in it. I only became a teacher to be on her schedule. I'm good. I'm a great teacher, but I just didn't enjoy it and I was really lost and like I was suicidal and my partner and I were still together. I knew we would not stay together because when she died, like I went toward sadness and he went toward anger and he became just a falling down alcoholic who thankfully has been sober for a long time now. But like we went in very different directions. He was just
Uh-huh.
pissed off at the world and I was just drowning in sorrow. And but he to his credit, I never thought he paid attention very much. But to his credit, like he paid attention. And one day he just said to me, if you go ahead and kill yourself, she's never going to forgive you. And I was so taken aback. And I was like, oh my God, he's right. Like he's right. And I was like, okay, well, then I got to find a way to channel my grief. I have to. And so I called the largest liver disease nonprofit in the US. I think they thought I was asking for a job and I wasn't, but I noticed that liver cancer wasn't anywhere on their website. And I knew at that point I'd become so knee deep in the liver cancer. I knew where the trajectory was going. I knew it was going to just keep going up, up, up. I knew it was going to get worse. So I pitched myself to volunteer for them. And I said, look, my background is writing and teaching and even some marketing. I would love to create some, educational materials and everything. And they shut me down hard. I always said if they had not said no, Blue Fairy, Blue Fairy wouldn't exist. But they shut me down so hard. I did more research, and there wasn't a single organization in the U.S. doing anything in liver cancer, and again, specifically HCC. And so I founded Blue Fairy, the Adrienne Wilson Liver Cancer Association. You'll like the synchronicity of this. When you found anything, you just send in the papers, right? And
Yeah.
then the government decides what the date's going to be, and they send it back. And I sent in the paperwork. The day that we were officially incorporated was 12/19/2002. And the day that Adrienne came to live with me was 8 years before on 12/19/1994.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt pretty special.
That is so special.
Yeah.
That is so special.
Yeah. It just felt like everything was lining up. And
Like it was meant to be. Yeah.
yeah. And we called it Blue Fairy because she loved blue,
Uh-huh.
but also because she loved fairies. And the summer she got sick, she had the blue wig. She also bought these blue butterfly wings, and we all started calling her our Blue Fairy. And she was actually buried in, not in the wig, but she was buried in the butterfly wings.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
special.
yeah.
I love the story behind the name because I was curious about that. So
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. That's really
So, what have you been doing now all these years? Because it's been a while. Because when did she pass away again?
She passed away October 9th of 2001,
2001.
and
Yeah.
Blue Fairy was founded in December 2002, and then we really started getting going in 2003. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Now, Blue Fairy's mission is to prevent, treat, and cure primary liver cancer, so specifically HCC, through research, education, advocacy. And for a long time, we were just a volunteer-led organization. We were helping patients. Doctors knew who we were. We were, very small and mighty. And I mean, I was not working full time for Blue Fairy. I always had other jobs. And then we really started growing in about 10 years ago is when we started growing. And then I became an employee, and then now I have more employees, and now we're really well known in the space as the HCC leading nonprofit.
Well, great. Well, tell me what you do now.
we provide so much education and support to patients and their families.
Okay.
And we really started with education, I think, because in the back of my head, when Adrienne was diagnosed, the surgeon who did her biopsy gave me all these one sheets about this chemo she was getting. And I said, well, this is the treatment. I need to understand the disease. And he said, well, those materials don't exist. And they didn't. Nothing existed. He made me copies from his medical textbooks. Bless him. I didn't understand a dang word. Okay. So I didn't understand anything. And I remember I bought a medical dictionary, which I still have, inch and a half thick, Grey's Anatomy, not the TV show for the younger people, but the actual Grey's Anatomy.
Uh-huh.
And I was sitting there translating into layman's terms about her disease. And that really stuck with me. And so when we first started, we really focused on education. We do so much more awareness now too, because liver cancer is highly preventable if you know what leads to it. So we have multiple education and advocacy programs. We have an annual research award that we give out every year on my sister's birthday. I can't say who it is. Very amazing winners this year. We actually have two winners this year. It was a tie. We have an incredibly lively community, and it's online HIPAA compliant community, so not a Facebook group. Mark Zuckerberg does not care about your health information, so it's not private. Even if it's a private Facebook group, your health information is not private on Facebook. And yeah, so that's what we do, and it's come a long way. I mean, patients live longer now, even with advanced disease. There are way more treatments. There are actually targeted treatments for HCC. There's immunotherapy now. There's just so much more available than there was when Adrienne was diagnosed.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you give those dates, that's when I was in my residency. So that's when,
Oh, wow.
mhm,
Oh,
at
wow.
the University of Iowa. So that's when I would have been taking care of, different kids, but
Yeah.
certainly didn't see that. Like I said, I saw plenty of hepatoblastoma in the younger kiddos, but and they always come in very, very yellow too. And she wasn't yellow, huh?
She did not turn jaundice until a few days before she died,
Really?
and only in her eyes. Yeah. And even then she made a joke about it. So her doctor at UCLA, we really liked him, but he decided it was time to stop treatment. And I mean, I agreed. And she was really mad. And he said, your eyes are yellow, Adrienne. And she just looked at him and just completely just dry said, well, I didn't notice, because she didn't have a mirror. So she was really, really upset with him. For she thought he was giving up on her, and he wasn't giving up. It was just time to stop. So
Okay, so I have a
yeah.
funny story about yellow eyes now.
Okay.
So now we have to do.
Okay,
So my
please.
foster son Valeriano, he had to get a kidney transplant because he has a disease called Alport syndrome. Okay, he also has something called Gilbert's disease, which is a liver disease, but it's fairly benign in that when you get really sick, you tend to get jaundice and turn yellow. Okay,
Okay.
he's
Yeah.
Guatemalan, so you cannot really see his skin getting
Yeah.
yellow, but his
Yeah.
eyes get quite yellow. Okay.
Yeah.
And so after his transplant, he went on a medication that made him get very yellow. So his bilirubin
Wow.
was up quite high. We, saw a liver specialist and he said, well, if it gets it's not really doing anything bad. It can get kind of itchy skin and things like that.
Right.
If it gets above 10, we'll put him on a medication. And the medication was phenobarbital, which is an anti-seizure medicine, which has a lot of not great side effects. So not something
Yeah.
we wanted to do. If it gets above 10, we'll do that. But otherwise, we'll just kind of, live with it. So he's just
Yeah.
got yellow eyes. So somebody at school commented or something on his yellow eyes, and his English isn't that great, but what he told them was, of course, kids in high school, a lot of them are smoking marijuana. He told them that he was smoking marijuana and it turned his eyes yellow. And he told me that he said, well, I thought if I told them marijuana turned my eyes yellow, maybe they wouldn't smoke marijuana.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. Okay, I have to share a story with you about marijuana. So when we were on our second pediatric oncologist, we were still at Children's Hospital, but we liked him a lot. And I was so frustrated, right? Because she was so nauseated by the chemotherapy and everything. And he said, well, probably the best thing for her is is pot. And
Yeah.
I'm like looking, I'm like, are you saying marijuana is the best thing for my child?
Mhm.
And I'm like, I wouldn't even know where to get any. And again, without missing a beat, Adrian goes, oh, I would, Because she actually pointed out the kid to me that was like the biggest dealer at her high school at the carnival weeks before she was diagnosed. She was like, "Oh yeah, that's Will. He's the weed dealer or whatever they called it then." But to his credit, this doctor, my frustration with Children's Hospital was they kept looking at her like she was a kid, and I was like, "Guys, she's 15. She's a grown woman. She's taller than me. She's a young adult. I know on paper she's 15, but
Yeah.
there were drugs that they wouldn't even consider trying, and that's one of the reasons we moved to UCLA because of her age. But this doctor, to his credit, said, "You know what? Let's try synthetic marijuana. It doesn't work for at least 50% of people.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, then we can talk about, other ways you could get it. She totally responded to it. It was amazing. It was amazing. And it completely brought her appetite back.
Oh, that's good.
The nausea was gone. And she talked me into getting a cat, and she named him Marinol, which is the synthetic
Yeah.
form of marijuana, because when she got him, he was so mellow. And it turned out he was mellow because he was super sick. And so, but he lived up to his name. He lived 13 and a half years, and he was like the sweetest, most mellow cat I've ever had in my life.
Well, my mom tried Marinol too. She did not do well. She did not respond. All
Didn't
she
she?
said was,
Yeah.
because she was dying of cancer. She had liver metastases as well. She
Okay.
had breast cancer, but it was primarily in her liver.
Yeah.
But she said when she would turn her head, everything would just like fall behind. Like, I do not like how this is making me feel. So we did not do that. So
Yeah.
we did talk a little bit before we started recording about something kind of unrelated, and that's just about the grief journey itself and about how friendships
Yeah.
changed so much for you. So I want you to talk about that personal part of your grief journey and how that was, because I think that's a good topic.
Yeah, and certainly not talked about enough.
No.
So I had this very close-knit group of friends between me and my partner, and they were all sort of interlinked. And my partner had a son from a previous relationship, and his son and my sister were only 6 years apart. So they were like brother and sister.
Yeah.
And this group of people like came together for every birthday, holidays. And again, they weren't really all friends with each other, but they were friends with us. And most of them were there for most of her cancer journey.
Uh-huh.
There were some that kind of trickled off. I mean, it really made me sad, and I knew that was going to happen. I just knew it. And they got to a point where in September, she's like, I really miss everybody, and they're not coming around to see me. And she said, would you email them? And I did. And I was like, she's not gone, guys. And so honestly, that should have been a sign.
Yeah.
I don't think I've thought about that enough, but that was a sign right there that they didn't want to face her dying. But Adrienne was also this like great connector of people among her friends. She had friends in different categories. So Adrienne dies, everybody's there, everybody shows up. And the first year, I just pretended I was okay. I do not recommend that path. And so, but I don't recommend it. But I did because I really felt like if I wasn't okay, people wouldn't be think I was okay, and I was kind of a leader in this whole group of people, and like I said, I was one of the connectors too, and I wanted everybody to not worry about me. And when I hit that year mark, when I was suicidal, I fell apart, and I just let myself fall apart. And then when I started to decide to start Blue Fairy, a lot of those same people came on board initially, but one person, and I'll never get understand this because you signed a legally binding document, but okay, she thought it was like group therapy for me. Like this was like Andrea's way of having therapy was to start this organization. And she didn't realize, no, this is a real deal. Like this is a real organization. And so some of them disappeared. I mean, some of them I just never heard from again. Like they just stopped calling, stopped showing up, just disappeared. Others, it took a few more years. And there was only one friendship that I purposely, well, two, I ended my relationship with my partner 2 years after Adrienne died. And then I ended one friendship purposefully because it wasn't healthy for either one of us. But all the other friends we had, all those people that were there for the birthdays and the holidays, and they used to say that they got to kind of practice being parents with his
Yeah.
son and with my sister, they all fell away. And it was really hard,
Really hard.
really hard. My high school friend didn't even show up to Adrienne's funeral. And
Wow.
she had her aunt call me and to explain, and I was very close to her family. They knew Adrienne from the time she was born. And she didn't show up for the funeral. Her aunt calls me and I said, that's just bull, and and my college friend was a couple years later. And yeah, it was really hard. And it's made me very mistrustful of people. It just
Yeah.
has. It has.
Well, it is hard, and we talked about this, that almost wondering if they just don't want to think that it could possibly happen to them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that maybe somehow this is a little bit contagious and I just need to stay
Yeah.
away from it. If I don't see it, I don't think it, I don't have to
Yeah.
feel it, right?
Oh, 100%. I think that's what it is. I mean, I always say you find out who your friends truly are when the worst possible thing happens to you. You
Yeah.
find out who your friends are. You see it over and over and over.
I think back to when Andy died. I had a lot of friends in high school, and I live in Michigan. I grew up in Iowa. I didn't expect certainly any of them to come. Uh, but one did. She didn't tell me she was coming. She just showed
Oh,
up. And it was really interesting to me because it's my friend Kirsten whose son had cystic fibrosis. And I
oh,
thought, that's why.
that's why
That's
she
why,
understands.
because she lived every day from his diagnosis knowing that she might outlive him. Now, I'm happy to say she hasn't, he is still living to this day and doing very well,
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
but it's different than any of my other friends, right?
Yep.
She lived, her reality was that she could lose him.
Yeah. She knew.
She
She
knew.
knew.
And I feel like that's what made the difference. And that's why that was of my high school friends and college friends actually. That's why that's the one that was there.
Yeah.
It actually was kind of interesting. She lives in Minneapolis. She was ended up being on a plane from Minneapolis with my aunt and three of my cousins. She could kind of figure out, she was looking at them and like, I think they kind of look like Marcy. I think maybe that is. And
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, but I was just, I mean, all of a sudden she walked up to me at the funeral home that night. I couldn't believe it. And I don't think it really hit me as to why she was the one until long after, when
Yeah.
when I started doing the podcast and I started thinking about this. I actually talked to her about it later. And of course she was like, she didn't think that was the reason why she came, but
Right.
I know that's the reason why.
But maybe subconsciously. Yeah. Yeah.
I know it was a subconscious thing. I mean, I
Right.
know that is why. But she wasn't scared to
So,
come to that
yeah.
because she lived with that fear constantly. The
Constantly.
rest
Yeah.
of my friends who had kids, because our boys are the same age too,
Yeah.
our boys, and which you would think that would make it extra hard for her because she has a boy with a disease that could kill him, and she's coming to my son's funeral. I
Yeah.
mean, that would be hard for her. And
Yeah.
yeah, and all of my other friends who, a lot of us had kids around the same age, none of them lived with that knowledge that could happen. And so I think for them, I don't even want to think about that as a possibility.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I agree. And something that my partner at the time told me later was the memorial service was public. I wanted any and all of Adrian's friends to be able to attend. And actually we had so many people, like they had to be outside. Like it was a
Yeah.
fire hazard. I mean, it was over 100 and something people. Like we made sure it was after school so they could all come. But the burial service the next day was private by invitation only. And it included those groups, that group of friends. But when it was over, I went off by myself. And my partner later said to me, he goes, that's the moment I realized that there was nothing I could do for you. And there was nothing I could do, nothing I could say that was going to make it better. There was just nothing. And I said, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. There's nothing you could do or say. I didn't want to talk to anybody when that burial was over. Like I said, though, I still that first year, I just pretended. And when I really let my feelings show, poof, vanished, gone. It was
Yeah.
just, I had one person reach out to me about 7 years after they disappeared. He and his wife met because of me. Like they met through me. And he reached out on Facebook, of course, and they had their first and only child together. And he finally got it. He finally got that love that you have for your child. And he apologized. But then he said the weirdest thing, like, I know you've been thinking about me every day since I disappeared. And I'm like, no, I haven't.
Not actually.
Don't flatter yourself. Okay. Like, you guys disappeared.
What's funny though is he probably had been.
I
He
think, oh,
had been
he
thinking
felt,
about you.
yeah, he felt extreme guilt.
Yeah, for
Extreme.
sure.
But by that point, I was so far past it. I was like, I never want to hear from you again.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys are still together. Congratulations on having your son. I never want to hear from you again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's like these other layers of grief. And so that's why I have so much respect for you for doing this show because I'm sure it happens when someone's spouse dies. I'm sure the same thing happens. It's just I think and when I say we, I mean like in the US, we don't talk about death and we don't deal with it very well and we don't like talk about grief.
Yeah. You're right. We don't. We don't. I mean,
Mm.
that's when I went searching for a podcast right away. A few months after Andy died, I started searching. Like, I couldn't find one on. There were some grief podcasts. There was nothing on child loss, though. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when I felt like I think maybe I'm supposed to start this. I didn't know where it was going to go, certainly, but it felt like a need that people need to feel like they're not alone because it is so isolating. You feel so alone in this grief.
My partner and I went to a grief support group for parents who lost their
Hmm.
children. And I heard you talking about this with another guest. We were the only ones whose child was young. A lot of the parents,
Yeah.
their children were adults when they died, young adults, but adults. But we stopped going because they would not acknowledge us as her parents. I was her sister and he was my friend. And we were like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I raised her for almost 7 years and he was there for 5 of those 7 years. And and he was there for every moment with her cancer. I mean, and we were in that together and we just were like, wait, we don't count as parents? Like what? So that was really disappointing for both of us.
That is.
Yeah.
That is disappointing. I know I do a support group through Starlight Ministries, and we've definitely had some non-parents in our parent group, non-biological parents, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yet we're parents and grieve the same. And you're right. I think it can be more difficult. I know one woman I'm thinking about in particular, her friends did not understand at all, right? Because she wasn't her mom, but
Oh
she
my God.
she was a parent to her.
Mm.
So I think that can make it a little bit more difficult too. When they're
Yeah.
younger and
Yeah.
well, I feel like thank you so much for this rich discussion today. Oh, you wrote a book too, you said. Because you told me
Yes.
you wrote a book.
Yeah.
You wrote the book in Adrienne's room.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we were talking about me doing the podcast in Andy's room.
Yeah.
So you better bring up the book. I'm sorry, I almost forgot about it.
No, that's okay. It's titled Better Off Bald: A Life in 147 Days.
Okay.
And it's about the 7 years in that period of my life when I raised Adrienne and lost her to cancer. And so it's a medical memoir and it's written like a journal because Adrienne was a really prolific writer. And so I introduced her point of view early on and I had a medical diary. And so day one is kind of like chapter one, but day one is day one of when I walked in the door and found her curled up in that fetal position.
Oh,
And then I used flashbacks to fill in
yeah.
the gaps of before we got there.
Oh,
And, you know, and I wanted to make it very clear for the reader, like the reader knows going in, she's not going to make it. Like they know it's very clear.
yeah.
It was a very difficult book to write. I love it when people say writing's cathartic. I'm like, well, it depends on what you're writing. So, really depends. Because for me, that first draft, it was like 2 years of solid pain, like stabbing myself every day, starting to heal and ripping off the scab again every single
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
But it was really, really worth it. And one thing I did do early on, because I knew I wanted to write about it one day, I didn't know when I'd be ready, was I did interviews with all those people that were still my friends at the time. So thank goodness I did them. I did interviews with everyone who would give me an interview about their relationship with Adrienne, things that happened when I wasn't in the room and stuff like that. And so so I was really able to fill it in, and it's really rich with detail and dialogue and conversation, but it's all because I asked people when their memories were still really fresh.
Oh, that's beautiful. So glad
Yeah,
you did that.
I am too. I am
And I
too.
and I love that too because I've talked about this before. When someone tells you a story about your child that you weren't there for, you suddenly got a new memory,
Yeah,
right? And those are such gifts because I don't get new memories. I don't get
yeah,
any new memories of Andy. But if someone tells me a story about Andy, of something he did in school or whatever, all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, that's a new memory now for me. That is a new little piece. So I love that you did that. You tried to kind of get as many memories as you could
yeah,
that you weren't there for and just create them for yourself. So
yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, how can people get the book? How can people find out more about the organization? All that.
Organization is bluefairy.org, BLUEFAERY.org. So it's fairy with an E instead of an I, because that's what Adrienne liked. She always wanted to go to Ireland. And then my book, Better Off Bald: A Life in 147 Days. You can get it wherever books are sold, Amazon, of course, through my website, AndreaWilsonWoods.com.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I just really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Oh, I did too. Thank you so much, Marcy.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful and would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can type Andy's Mom, one word, to the number 53555. This provides a link to GiveButter, which allows donations through PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, or credit cards. GiveButter will provide a receipt of your tax-deductible donation, or you can visit the donation page at andysmom.com/donate. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 and can receive donations through Thrivent Financial and Benevity. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com or on the Instagram or Facebook Always Andy's Mom accounts. Sign up for the email list to get weekly episode links as well as pictures of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.